morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our 15-minute logistics webinar. Today's topic is going to focus on the fillable requisition, Form 6409. A lot of people like to print out the 6409 and handwrite it in, but you can actually fill it in online and save it for future reference. So today, that's what I'd like to focus in is how can you fill out the 6409 online and then either print it or actually email it to someone to enter into the tracker. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. I'm your host today. I'm L.V. Spencer. I'm the logistics lead for the Southwest and Rocky Mountain Division, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. These are the 4 things I'd like to focus on today about the fillable 6409 or the requisition. I'd like to show you how you can download it from the exchange, which means you will have to have an exchange account, login, and password. And then I'm going to show you how you complete it online. And then third thing I'd like to do today is show you how you can just print select pages of the 6409, and that being pages 1 and 3. And then at the end, we'll wrap it up by showing you how you can attach it to an email, that requisition, and then email it to Log Supply as well. So before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about the requisition, and I'll refer to it as the F6409 because that's how you'll see it in the exchange. We use the requisition 6409 for ordering supplies on a disaster relief operation, and we also use it for ordering services. A lot of people think it's only for supplies, but you can use it for services as well. And then we also use it for returns. So after a DRO, if people need to return supplies from like a shelter, or even if we need to return supplies back to the Disaster Field Support Center, the DFSCs, we can use the 6409s for that as well. And we also use the 6409 both on a DRO for both internal use and external use. So for ordering outside of the DRO, say like to a supplier, the DFSCs will use it. But even if we're ordering items within the DROs, for example, for the DST, Disaster Service Technology, if we need computers or cell phones, we'll use the 6409. If we need a rental car, we'll use the 6409. So those are internal. So it's not used just outside for suppliers, but it's also used internally as well. Here are some best practices on a 6409 when you do use it. And I say when you do use it, you do have to use it for any time that you're requesting services and supplies. And you want to make sure that you create separate 6409s for services and a separate one for supplies. Please don't combine those. And then there's also some other things that's best practices is that when you're requisition for IKD, it's best if you don't combine things we're going to buy with things that are for an IKD or an in-kind donation. So those should be on separate 6409s. If you think the item is in the warehouse or you know the item is in the DRO warehouse, and I'm talking about the DRO warehouse, not the DFSC warehouses, but the DRO warehouse, then you want to create a separate requisition for that warehouse. And you also want to separate requisitions for each supplier. It gets a little confusing for procurement or supply to go out and buy things if you have multiple suppliers on one requisition. So it's easier for them if they're separated out. When you're ordering items from the DFSC, you know, the cots and comfort kits and cleanup kits and things like that, blankets, you need to make sure that you have the stock number. It's much easier for them to process your order at the DFSC if you have the stock number, and then they're not trying to guess what you're trying to order. So there's the stock number is a real key for the DFSC to make sure they order the right item for you. Now, if you have any doubts about when or how many 6409s to create, you can always check with the logistics supply people before creating the 6409, and they can give you some guidance. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do all this, but it makes it a lot easier on supply and procurement when they're processing the 6409s if you follow these best practices. Not combining the services and supplies, separate requests for the IKD, separate requests for the warehouse, and then a requisition for each supplier. And as we go along, I think you'll see why this makes it a little bit easier. Here's the 6409 process flow. It may be a little bit difficult to read, but you know, what happens to that 6409 after you've created it? Well, it all starts over here with the customer need, and I'm going to see if I can't get a pin here. So it starts off with the customer identifying a need, and after they say, well, I need something, or I need a service, or I need a supply, they're going to prepare a 6409, a requisition. Now, that requisition has to be approved and has to go through a certain process. But once it's been completed, it's been filled out, it's got the items on there, then it's been approved, and I'll show you the fields for the approvals. Then it can go into supply. And after it goes over to supply on the DRO, then they're going to put it into the tracker system. The tracker is just a database keeping track of all the requisitions that have been submitted, so we can verify, yes, we did receive it, yes, it's in works, yes, it's been forwarded on and things. So it sort of gives us the status of that requisition as long as it's into the tracker. So everything's ordered with the 6409, everything is entered into the tracker. Now, after it's in the tracker, one of the things supply is going to do is they're going to determine the sourcing. So when you complete the 6409, you do not have to determine where are we going to get this. Supply will determine that for you. And they're going to determine, is this an IKD? Is this going to be ordered through request? Are we going to buy it locally on a procurement card? Are we going to get it from the DRO warehouse? Now, this is the DRO warehouse. The items for the DFSC warehouses or distribution centers, they are all going to go through request. So after it goes through IKD, request, procurement card, then it eventually gets to the supplier, and it's going to be delivered. So that's the basic process flow, but it all starts off with that customer determining his need and initiating the 6409. Now, if I can go to the next slide, I'm going to give you a little demonstration of the 6409, and let's see if I can get to the right spots. That's not the one. Okay. Here's the exchange. I've already got it up and running, and I probably am going to have to log back in. I'm going to go to our services, disaster services, and yes, it's going. I timed out, so I'm going to log back in. I apologize for this, but that's the way it is. Now, I'm at the disaster services site, and if you scroll down here, you'll see disaster forms listed alphabetically or by number. And I'm going to select by number. And now I'm going to get a listing of all the disaster forms by number. And since I know this is a 6409, I can just scroll down to this 6409. So I'm looking for an F, the 6409, and the requisition. I'm going to click on requisition, and then with the let it refresh here. And this is the 6409. What I would recommend once you get this pulled up is that you go ahead and save it and then you can either save it to your desktop or to a file, and that way you always have a blank 6409. So the 6409 has basically three parts. This first part is I refer to Part A. There's also a Part B, which is basically the receipt. And then there's a Part C, which is a bill of lading, which we don't use too much. And we won't cover that today, but our focus today will be mostly on the Part A. Now, you should go along on the 6409. You'll notice it's like 7 pages, but there's also instructions. And as you print the 6409, of course, we don't want to reprint those instructions and use all that paper. So that's the 6409, and I'm going to show you one that I've already filled out. Here's one that's already been done, and basically what it starts off with is the DR number. You're going to put in a DR name, the date. The requisition number is going to come from the tracker. Once it's entered into tracker, then the tracker system will produce a requisition number, and that way you can track that requisition through the process. Now, the SWaRM trip number doesn't apply to us. That's where it's going to be loaded on a truck and things. So typically, ours is going to be a shipment or a return. Then we're going to put in here, who do we want it shipped to? In this case, I'm shipping it to the logistics warehouse supervisor in Colorado Springs. Then you can put in special instructions as well. So you can put anything in there. That's all free text. So you can put anything you want in there. And then if this is an IKD, then you can click on that. Or if this is going to be a drop trailer, then you could also put drop trailer on there. And a drop trailer is just where you want them to disconnect the trailer from the tractor, and they're going to leave the trailer there for you to offload at another time. Now, the next thing is the requester's information. This is being ordered by Catherine, and she's in the logistics group, and she's supply, and then she would sign this after she prints it out as well. Now, typically the requester and the approver cannot be the same people. So typically requesters are going to be like supervisors, managers, and the approver may be the chiefs or the managers. It all depends on the director of operations, the DRO job director, as to what authority he wants to put on who can assign for different things. Now, this requisition is for DFSC items. So I've got the stock numbers here for them. I've got the item descriptions. I put in the need by date. And be very careful about your need by date, because if it's a very short need by date, they will maybe pay extra freight to get that item to you by your need by date. So that should be 2 or 3 days out, so it can be shipped by normal freight. Now, the harder part is this quantity, unit of measure, and the total quantity. Oftentimes what I do is I start backwards, is that I know in this case I want 400 clamshells. Well, I know they come by 200 per case, and that's what that is, unit of measure, how many's per case. So that means I want 2 cases. And if we put it over here in the total quantity each, then that helps people determine what you actually want, the each. And the same thing here with the banquet packs is I wanted 500 banquet packs. I know they come by 250 per case for the D68s, so I want 2 cases of banquet packs. And then down here, the approver is going to mark it as approved by, and then we're ready to go. And then here's the instructions. And since I typed this in, it automatically fills out the Part B for me. So as you make changes to Part A, it's going to make the changes to the Part B, which is a real nice feature. You don't have to duplicate all the typing and writing as well. And then this is going to fill it in for the person that's receiving it. So that's how you fill it out. Now, let's say you want to print this, but you don't want to print all those instructions as well. So I'm going to go up here to Print File. And when I print it, right now the pages are set to print from pages 1 through 7. Well, I don't want to print all 7 pages. I only want to print pages 1 and 3. So to do that, you would put 1, 3. Now, if you put a 1-3, that means you're going to print pages 1, 2, and 3. It's going to print all the pages between 1 and 3. But since we only want 1 and 3, we're going to just do pages 1, 3. And then when you do the print, you're going to get only pages 1 and 3. And you can save a lot of paper that way. Now, the other thing you can do with this form is you can save it. And when you save it, you just have to remember where you saved it to, and then you can attach it to an email. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's see where I'm at. Okay. Here's my ARC mail. So when I create a new email, one of the things I want to do is attach it. And I have a little paper clip at the top. And so when I have created that requisition, I'm just going to go through my different file folders and find where I saved that requisition, and then I'm going to attach it to the document. And then when I send it off to supply, they can automatically upload it into the tracker system. They don't have to retype it. It's just importing it from the email, which saves a lot of time. It's a little bit more work on the end user, but it saves time for supply to update it. So let me get out of some of these screens and back to the PowerPoint. I notice we're a little bit over. So that's the demonstration. One of the things I want to remind you about, access the tracker, the sandbox version. You can do that by going to the logistics neighborhood, and there's the links and to that. And some people get a little confused about what is a sandbox. That's just the area where you can go in and play with the system. You're not going to do any damage or any hurt anything, but you can just go and play with tracker in the sandbox environment. So that's the one last thing I wanted to remind you about. Here's some future topics that are coming up. Next week I want to share with you some pre-prepared requisitions I've developed. Now that you know how to do the requisition, the 6409, I'm going to show you some that I've already gotten ready. So when I go on a DRO, I know I'm going to have to submit these, and they're all set and ready to go. And that's just check your email box for future webinars. We'll try to do it again next Thursday at the same time. It'll be the same login information. And I'm going to stay online for just a few more minutes to answer any of your questions that you may have.